All right. Well, good morning. Welcome. We're thrilled to have you with us today for our Recover Seattle, the Future of Work program. I'm Emily Parkhurst. I'm the president and publisher of the Puget Sound Business Journal. This is a four-part series that we are presenting in partnership with the Downtown Seattle Association and Schwabe, Williamson, and Wyatt. During today's discussion, we're going to hear from three top executives about what they're planning for the coming year. Before we get started, I have just a few quick items that I'd like to go over so you know how to participate in today's event. We have taken a screenshot of an example of the attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your own computer's desktop in the upper right-hand corner. You will have the opportunity to submit text-based questions to today's presenters by typing those questions into the questions pane of the control panel. We'll be monitoring that throughout the course of the discussion, so don't feel like you have to wait to the end to submit questions. You can submit them throughout the whole discussion. We will also be recording today's discussion, and all registrants will receive a link tomorrow afternoon to watch the recording if you miss any parts of it or have to step away. Now, please join me in welcoming my co-MC for today's event, the DSA CEO, John Scholes. John?
Thanks so much, Emily. Good morning, everybody. And before we dive in here, just on behalf of DSA and our two partners, congratulations to the Seattle Storm on their fourth WNBA championship. Such an incredible team, both on the court and off the court, for their leadership and activism, and they make Seattle proud. And Sue Bird was reluctant to use the D word of dynasty, but I think when you win 4 titles, you're a dynasty, and we're so grateful and celebratory of their terrific play and victory. And in these times, we need to pause and celebrate all the good news that's out there. So congratulations to the team and to Coach Hughes in the front office. So as Emily mentioned, this is the fourth in a 4-part series that we've been so pleased to co-partner and produce with PSBJ and Schwabe, Williamson, and Wyatt. We first dove into the public health information and the state of the virus and the vaccines and treatments with some great public health experts earlier in the summer. We took a look at the state of the economy and the effects that the pandemic has had on our regional economy and the outlook moving forward. We had a great conversation around how we rebuild an inclusive economy and individual steps we can take as organizational and business leaders within our own entities to address diversity, equity, and inclusion and systemic racism. And to introduce today's program, and what we intend to cover today, is Graciela Gomez-Cowger, the CEO of Schwabe, Williamson, and Wyatt. Thanks, Graciela, for you and your team's great partnership in producing these events. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, John. I am very excited to be with you today. Thank you all for taking the time to be here virtually, attending this, and hopefully you'll take some good takeaways, which I'll be helping you with at the end of the program. You know, as it turns out, and I'm absolutely echoing John's excitement over the storm. It's awesomely good news, and I think we should take all good news that we can take during these trying times. Everyone leading an organization right now wishes they had a crystal ball, myself included. So we decided to bring you the next best thing. Perspectives from 3 top executives to tell us how they see the future of work shaping up, how things have changed for their businesses, what long-term impact they expect the pandemic to have on their industries, and really how they are leading their organizations during a year like no other. So let's see what we can learn, and I'll come back at you at the end of the program with some takeaways. Emily?
Wonderful. Well, thanks, Graciela, and thanks so much for your support of the program. We're thrilled to have you here. We also want to thank the wonderful people at Urban Renaissance Group who have stepped up to support this series. Urban Renaissance Group is a Seattle-based full-service real estate company focused on investing, building, and managing great buildings. And we would also like to thank WGU Washington, our silver sponsor for today's program and a wonderful partner of the Puget Sound Business Journal's program. So thank you, WGU, for your support. And with that, we are excited to welcome this amazing panel for today's discussion. So please join me in welcoming Maria Chavez Wilcox, the CEO of the YWCA Seattle King Snohomish. Maria joined the YWCA in 2016 as the organization's first Latina chief executive. She has more than 30 years of nonprofit leadership experience, including 15 years as the CEO of the United Way of Orange County. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you.
Please also welcome Tanya Drake, who is the Chancellor of WGU Washington, a position she's held since 2018. WGU Washington enrolls more than 13,000 full-time students and has granted nearly 22,000 bachelor's and master's degrees statewide. Great to have you, Tanya.
Thank you so much, Emily. I'm excited to be here.
And also please join me in welcoming Leslie Feinzag, founder and CEO of the Female Founders Alliance, a social purpose corporation that hosts accelerators for women-founded startups and supports female founders seeking to raise capital and launch their companies. It's great to have you, Leslie.
Good morning. I'm really happy to be here.
So with that, I'll turn it over to Graciela to kick us off.
All right, panelists, I have your first very difficult question. It's a trick question. No, I'm totally kidding. Welcome, everyone. You know, at Schwabe, we've started our planning and budgeting for 2021. And unlike years past, we can't seemingly solely rely on historical benchmarks, especially when it comes to planning and budgeting. There's still too much uncertainty in the system, which I'm sure you will all reflect. How are you addressing this planning and budgeting phase in your own organizations, and what challenges and opportunities do you see ahead for you? Not sure who wants to start first. Maria?
Sure. So we started to launch on a strategic plan for the organization. The first one that the organization has ever had, quite frankly, in about 126 years. Under some great leadership, and decided when this was all happening that was just not feasible. And so what we've done to adjust is we are now looking at a one-year framework. This is not going to go away. We are not going to go back to what was. I hate to use this word because it's used a lot, but I don't even think this is the new normal. There's a new normal coming. And there's going to be a lot of change happening between what's happened with COVID when it first came out, now, and the future. So we are planning just for what we know. Graciela, if you have a crystal ball when you get it, please pass it. But we are just planning basically, to really look at the next year and then the next 2 years if we possibly can, and really be realistic about what we can accomplish in these very, very challenging times. Our whole environment has obviously changed. And the last thing that I'll say is the YWCA is a first responder. It is an essential service, according to Governor Inslee. So we are probably working harder than we ever have before. I'm back to 18-hour days. We have not stopped since day one. And we have more and more clients needing our help, quite frankly, because a lot of other organizations are not there for them right now. And being the largest shelter service for women and girls in not only the city, but throughout the county is a huge responsibility. So what we're doing is we're taking it realistically over the next year and modifying as we go along, realizing that the financial cliff that we're facing this year is realistically going to be there probably. Not the cliff, but it's going to take a long time to recover. So that's what we're doing and how we're addressing it.
Well, thank you so much, Maria, for your service and for the YWCA's contributions to our community. Very much appreciated, very much needed. With that, I'll turn over to, how about Leslie?
Yeah, similarly, we have basically shortened the period of our planning cadence. So we're now doing strategic planning every 3 months and reviewing plans once a month. We're trying to be as conservative as possible and trying to keep 6 months of cash in the bank at all times. I know that's not possible for every organization, but we have kind of long sales cycles. So we're just trying to be very conservative with our costs, and I think that just try to stick around and fight the long fight. The other part that is, I don't know if the rest of you are feeling this, but my organization is basically all of us are caretakers of one way or another. We either care for parents, spouses, or children. Everybody is feeling severe burnout, or kind of getting close to the point of severe burnout. So the other thing that we have made a priority is what we call intentional pacing. We can be very aggressive in our goals. That's just the kind of people that we are. That's the kind of person I am, right? Like I like to accomplish big things in a short period of time. But we've learned that that it's important to pace ourselves, because this is going to go on for we don't know how long this is going to go on for. So the literal first item in our quarterly goals at the moment, if you go in and look at them, is intentional pacing. Remember not to overschedule yourself. To put buffer zones in between, like moments of like large deliveries, or like large projects, and be mindful that at any given time your support system might crumble, which is ironic that I'm saying that now, because I don't have childcare today, and I only found that out last night. So at any point your day might like blow up in front of you, and that's the case for my entire organization. So we're really trying to build systems where people can be whole humans, and we don't like risk the longevity of our business for kind of short-termism.
I'd like that term, be whole humans. I'm not even sure what that means anymore. But how about you,
You're
Tanya?
about to find out when the toddlers come into the picture.
Tanya, do you have some wisdom to offer here? Oh,
Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry, what was that?
oh, never mind. Go ahead.
We good? Okay, thank you. So I will say that some of the challenges that we're facing is really trying to identify those workforce needs, and they're rapidly changing. We think about this evolving economy towards this tech economy, and I've heard it for years and years, the fast pace of change that we're experiencing in technology, and COVID has hit the fast forward on that narrative. And so for some reason, I have not received my crystal ball yet, although I'm waiting for it to be delivered on my front steps anytime. So I think we're really trying to lean into what does this new economy look like, and what is the emerging workforce need, and really trying to identify the skills that individuals are going to need to re-enter this economy, I think is quite a challenge. And then gearing up to make sure that we have the learning available in modality that's flexible for individuals like Leslie, who are still working from home and working with kids in their workspace. And so I think some of those are the challenges that we are facing in higher education. I think higher education is also pivoting towards modality in online, and that is also a challenge for some institutions who may not be resourced and have some of the skill sets within their faculty and the support systems for students to ensure that they're successful in an online environment.
Leslie, you started to address this, and I really like the phrase intentional pacing. And I want to ask each of you, are there other types of strategies that you've had to embrace over the last 8 or so months in this new world that we're in, and how you're working and how your organizations are working beyond just working remotely? But are there other strategies that you're embracing to manage through this? And then the second part of that question, have you started to measure the effects of this on productivity, engagement, and your culture? Is it too soon to sort of gauge what those impacts are, positive or negative, in this new way that many of us are working?
So I will say that we don't really have intentional pacing because we are responding to client needs every single day. And it's hard because we never know what every day is going to bring, even though I love, Leslie, that term, and I'm going to look for ways to at least do that for myself and set it as a role model. John, to answer the second half of your question, we are seeing a change in culture, because what I have is frontline staff who are dealing with already traumatized clients. This trauma on top of trauma is really, really something that a lot of people can't deal with. So one of the things that we're seeing in our culture is I have a double issue here. Is keeping my staff strong and keeping my staff healthy and keeping my staff hope, because without my staff, the clients aren't going to get help. But when we have, COVID-19 clients in our facilities, it's all I can do to not have my staff run away and say that they're not going to come back to work. Because quite frankly, if they don't come back to work, I am in deep trouble, okay? Because we need them to be there. And so what we're really seeing in our culture is a huge shift to really being intentional about providing more support, more outreach as much as possible to our staff, especially our staff on the front lines. And they now have a multitude of needs in addition to their own fear, right? And their own fear of getting COVID and bringing it home. But also, excuse me, sorry, having the challenge of having kids at home and potentially having to be the only person that can educate their children. So we are being very versatile in that, but we're also seeing a change in culture because some people are able to work remotely. We are redesigning some of our space so that children can come in safely into an environment. We're hiring tutors for their children so that they can be in the front lines and helping their clients, and that gives them some peace of mind. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, maybe just a quick follow-up, Maria. I think you are in some ways unique as an organization because you've got some folks that can work remotely and some folks that need to be there on the front lines. Does that present some unique challenges to your culture, and are you having to deploy different strategies to sort of address this bifurcated workforce?
Yes, and quite frankly, because we're an organization of equity, I was very nervous about the equity lens on this one, okay? Because quite frankly, the people that can work from home are the people that are not on the front line. And the equity issue, as you know, not only with our organization, but with a lot of folks, is that the people at the higher levels don't have to deal with the same, issues that we do. So even though my HR person goes crazy, I have made it a point of going to all the facilities. I have made it a point of being seen, and I have 24 different facilities in 2 counties. My exec staff and I are delivering lunches to our front desk staff. We are rotating a schedule of who's going to be stopping where so that we're seen, so that that perception doesn't stay ingrained in where they are. Because the answer, I'm working harder from home than I would be at the office, doesn't fly when you're downstairs and you've got clients screaming at you and you've got the Harborview Mobile in front of your building. And quite frankly, even for me as a human being, and this is where we also have to take care of ourselves, Leslie, and I relate to you, I, had the funeral director from a mortuary come to my office, and I had to sign for the first time in my entire life papers for one of our clients that had passed away because she didn't have a family. The trauma of that for me, because I'm already a person that is damaged, even though I'm recovering from traumatic experiences in my life, was huge. Now, what I did, rightly or wrongly, was I decided to take that on and not let my staff be there. But obviously the staff look out the window. They see Harborview. They see the truck outside. They see this woman being taken out, fully covered. And that trauma is just really, really intense. So what we're trying to do is I'm trying to be hopeful. I'm being positive. I'm being Maria. I keep smiling. I keep saying good morning. I keep showing up, delivering lunches, sending them notes, letting them know how much we appreciate them, and really rotating that with the exec team. Because I really think it's important that we don't just work from our offices and we're not seen by the front lines. And quite
Some great
frankly, that's just not acceptable to me.
Some great advice there. Thank you. And Tanya, did you feel, because you are an online university, did you feel that your organization and culture was sort of more equipped to manage through these last several months, or are there certain new strategies that you've also had to embrace?
Sure, John, a little bit of both. So being an online university, we were really built to thrive in an environment like COVID. And so operations have really not been interrupted in that way for our employees. We have the technology solutions to really weather this very well. That said, I wanted to lean into what Maria was saying, and that's the impact on employees and our students. And so while we have all the technology to weather this and the mechanisms and processes to be successful during COVID, the emotional toll that it has taken on our students and our employees is significant. And so we've done a lot more development around social and emotional learning because our faculty are now interacting with students, not just based on their academics, but around the other stressors that our students are feeling around life. And so really equipping them with that social emotional skill set to help students weather more than just academics has really been a pivot for us. And quite frankly, good for our employees as well to know and understand triggers, how to direct individuals to resources, and really support, be a holistic support for students as they're going through this. And so those are the areas that we've leaned into and have changed our organization.
And Leslie, was there a series of events or some triggers that led you to sort of embrace this intentional pacing strategy, or has that been part of your culture for some time? What led up to that?
Well, I think we're all living in the same 2020. So like we have gone through the same series of events that brought us here. We are a younger organization than both of my colleagues. We are a smaller organization than both of my colleagues, and we are more of a tech startup, if you will. Which means that first of all, we still haven't gotten to the point of predictability in our business, even outside of COVID, right? Like we have grown 5 times over in the past 16 months, 18 months. That's how old my daughter is, which is how I know the starting point. So we were already wildly unpredictable, and the pacing of our work was how much more can we do, because we're in growth mode, right? We're like in pretty dramatic growth mode. And when COVID happened, like a lot of what we do relies on in-person connection. So we were traveling to different cities. We were having like day-long events in person, a lot of like one-on-one connections. And you know, at first we thought we would not be able to do that for the month of March. Then we thought March through May, and then we realized that like it's actually, we need to throw out the entire plan and put something new in place. While all of this was going on, the COVID scares started happening among my team. I have, you know, myself, my family lives in Costa Rica, so I like haven't gone to see them for a year. We've had multiple, either in my family or my team's families, COVID scares, quarantines, deaths in like extended family. So everybody has been really deeply impacted, and to say nothing of the kids, right? Like the school closures, unpredictability of childcare. And I think what that has taught us is, first of all, there's been a lot of crying in meetings, and that's perfectly okay, right? Like I said, nobody cries alone at the Female Founders Alliance. We cry together. There's been a lot of like bringing kids into the meetings. There's been a lot of, we started doing things like doing a guided meditation once a week all together in our team meeting online. So everybody turns off the webcam and we have somebody lead a guided meditation. The other thing that has changed for us, and this is more on like the business side, and which I highly recommend, we have become just dramatically more intentional about prioritizing. We were good at prioritizing before, but there's nothing like 2020 to teach you what really matters. And one of the things that I'm getting out of this conversation is like the contrast with Maria's story of like first responders really puts everything in perspective. And so, you know, I see there's like 250 people here in the audience, and a lot of us are not first responders. We're just kind of doing our jobs day to day, and our jobs are essential to someone, but not in the same way that running a homeless shelter is. And I think that like to be compassionate with our teams and to make sure that they're set up for success and to make sure that we are set up for success, this is the time to know what really, really, really matters to your business. What are the things that are going to make sure that your business is around 12 months from now to kind of fly out of the recovery, right? To really kind of take that nice S curve. And what are the things that you're just doing because that's the way that things have always been done, but really it's not going to make much of a difference if they get dropped. So this is a really good time to look at all those things. And I think the one thing that I feel pretty proud of is watching my team kind of feel empowered to make those decisions for themselves, to say, you know what, if we don't do this series of events, it's not going to be the end of the world. So we're going to grow a little bit slower. Our revenue's not going to be impacted. You know, like maybe our ego will take a little hit because we didn't get the big speaker or whatever, but it's actually not the end of the world. And that I think has made us a much stronger organization. It's really funny what happens when you know what really, really, really matters and you focus on it. So I'm really proud of how we've done over the past few months, even though I would probably trade it all for seeing my parents again.
Some really great advice there. I can feel my team thinking, I hope you're taking notes, John. And I am. This is some really great advice. So thank you.
I mean, it
Absolutely.
comes from the volatility of my childcare. That's where it comes, because like I am the first one that like suffers from all these things. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old and a husband with a full-time job, and I have like a more than full-time job and no family in town at all. So I feel firsthand what happens when your support system is not there for you. And just putting a plug for like mom CEOs, right? Or like caretakers as CEOs, just knowing like intrinsically, this is what real life is like. And this is what my team is going through. I'm pretty impressed with myself that my kids are not like crawling all over me right now.
Well, and if they do, Leslie, it's okay.
They're pretty cute. They're pretty cute.
They are. You actually bring up a question that I wanted to ask all three of you. You all are advocates for equity in your organizations and outside your organizations. As we move into this recovery period in our region and we start rebuilding, how do we make sure that we're rebuilding the economy in a more equitable way this time? And how do we make sure the recovery itself is equitable? I'd be interested in hearing each of you speak to that. And Maria, I know this is a real passion of yours, so I guess I'll throw it to you first.
Okay, so I really do think it's not just window dressing, right? It's become the buzzword, and I think that a lot of people say that they're doing things, but I'm not quite sure if they're actually doing them. But what I think we need to do is to really listen to the diverse people in our community. Sorry about this. And get them at the table and really hear what they have to say and really hear about their recommendations and include them in the process. We're not doing this for them, right? We're doing this together. We're a community. We're a collective. And so what I really think needs to happen is really seriously and candidly inviting those voices equally at the table to hear what their recommendations and what some of their solutions are. And I think that will make a huge change and a huge shift in how that occurs. I don't want to be unpopular here, but just hiring people of color is not going to do it, okay? Because there's this whole adage by all of us that are people of color that just because you have a person of color doesn't mean that they themselves are understanding equity and understanding the issues of being a person of color. And so that's what I mean by window dressing. And I think that, you know, corporate America, I think our society, I think our community is really going to have to take a look at what does it mean to embrace people of equity and also make them feel welcome, because it's not the same dynamic, and not make them feel alone and not make them feel singled out or make them feel like it's a quota. That's what I think is really going to change and make a significant difference in inclusiveness and in making a huge shift in the community. And I particularly look at John with that, with the Downtown Seattle Association and the members of that group, of which a couple of us here are members of that, and I'm a proud new member of that, but just some of the conversations that I've heard. And I do think people have to consciously say, okay, I'm not going to window dress. I'm not just going to hire so-and-so. I really am going to bring people in and have a conversation.
I love that. That was great. Thank you. Leslie, how about you?
Yeah, you know, it's hard to follow Maria, first of all, who's like really at the forefront of this thinking. No, I say that with humility, like it's somebody that I've looked up to for a long time. And I'm very humbled to be on the same panel with you, Maria.
Thank you so much, Leslie. I appreciate that.
I'll just, I'll take a different stab at it. Last week, we learned that 4 out of 5 people who left the workforce in September are women. 850,000 caretakers left the workforce, because what we are asking of ourselves is impossible. It's impossible. Before this whole thing started, we had multiple parties, the World Economic Forum, we even had locally the AI Institute publishing research that said that at the pace of current change, it was going to take 200 years for women to be on the same footing at the workforce than men. This, I don't know what to call this, this year has set us back probably centuries. I don't know what the answer is. I tend to be of the opinion that when you get to issues of this magnitude and this complexity, there's no single solution. And anybody who tells you that there is probably selling you something. But I think that it starts probably with education. It starts with early education, with childcare that is accessible to all. It starts with a longer paternity leave, and I do say paternity leave specifically, although I guess we should probably also have longer leave for moms too, right? All of those issues that make a household with 2 parents more equitable and allow us to be real partners at home, or at least to start to getting us to be real partners in the workplace. There's just too much broken right now, and I feel like I'm not even equipped to start the list, but I do know that it starts with help us go back to work, help us manage our life sustainably and our work sustainably, and then just watch what happens afterwards, right? Because like the other side of that equation, and I like to be sure that people don't think that we're just asking for equity's sake. Like, you actually have phenomenally better results when you have diverse teams, right? So like in my world, when you look at female founded companies, you know, we have data from First Round Capital, which is one of the biggest VCs in Silicon Valley. They looked at their own portfolio and saw that companies that had been co-founded or founded by women had 63% higher ROI than the companies that had all male founding teams. We have data from BCG that says that female founded teams, for every dollar that you invest in them, they return twice the revenue for every dollar you invest in them than all male teams. And this is just because of the pure diversity of the team, because you have people who are trying harder because they have it harder to begin with. There's data on the private company side that your results are going to be, or your ROI will be anywhere from 10 to 60% better if you have female leadership in at different levels, at the board level, at the executive level, at the director level. So this is good for everyone, to say nothing of how much better our technology, our products, our solutions are going to be if they're designed with everybody in mind, right? Like, I like to remember if you remember when the Apple iWatch came out, you know, when it came out, it helped you track your blood alcohol level, but not your menstruation cycle. I mean, like who was sitting at that table when they designed the thing that like half the world's population would benefit from? Okay, I can get off my soapbox now. That's my plug.
I love it. Well, this is a soapbox zone, so we encourage that. Tanya, Leslie brought up education, which of course is near and dear to your heart. When you think about rebuilding in a more equitable way, where does your mind go on that?
Thank you so much. I picked up on that one also. And, equity is certainly a passion of mine, particularly around social justice. And, at WGU, we have lots of conversations around how talent is really abundant, but opportunity is not. And I like what Leslie was talking about. One of the paths, not the only path, but one of the paths to opportunity is education. And I think now is the time that we do need to be bold and encourage both employers to play a part of that as well as individuals. And really think about what are those skills that individuals will need in this new workforce. And I think people of color, and particularly women, as Leslie said, have been disproportionately impacted during this pandemic. I think the opportunities there do lie with the ability to learn new skills, to upgrade. That doesn't necessarily mean a degree. Maybe it's a certificate. Maybe you come with lots of experience, but you just need some additional skill sets to re-enter the market. And I do think we have an opportunity to encourage people to be bold. I know it's hard to think of taking on like one more thing during this pandemic, and yet I think that there's some real opportunity to encourage individuals to really think about what if and to prepare themselves now. Because I think one of the lessons we learned during the Great Recession is people waited. They waited up to 2 years to go back and get that reskilling they needed, and it extended the recovery time. And so, as much as it feels like one more thing, I think now is the time for individuals to really think about what their workforce looks like, particularly people of color and women.
I know I've already spoken, one of the things about equity, and this is in the back of my mind, 70% of the women and girls that we serve are women of color. I don't know how many of you know that. And so we really are serving women of color. And what brought this to mind was the vaccine. And here I go again. Sorry about that. And the question has been brought up in the media about who's going to get the vaccine first, okay? And what's going to be the priority of giving the vaccine to people. And I'm pretty jaded. So I'm just going to tell you that I think my jaded perspective is that people of privilege will have access to that vaccine before the women that we are helping that are already so far back in getting just basic health care. Leslie, you're talking about just basic health care as I am. I'm trying to get some of these women just mammograms, okay? And I really am jaded. What's going to happen with this vaccine that's killing people and, quite frankly, killing more people of color by percentages than anybody else right now? So the rational, moral, right thing to me would say that the people that are being impacted the most should be the people first in line to get the vaccine. I don't think that's what's going to happen. Okay, I don't see the tea leaves, but I think the people of privilege, the people that can pay for it, the people that can get first in line are going to get the best care. And once again, people of color, specifically women of color, are going to be pushed back, and I really do believe that their death rates are going to continue to skyrocket. I mean, people are going to wonder why, and I'm going to tell you why. Because the people that are being the most affected at the highest rates are going to be the ones most discounted, and I hope that I'm wrong. I really pray that I'm wrong. But that's one very concrete example of equity or lack of it. And I guess that could be another webinar in itself. Sorry, I had to share that.
No, thank you, Maria. want to ask each of you what you see within your own organization and industries as being some of the lasting changes to how we're working once we get to a post-vaccine reality. What do you think will go back to sort of how it was in how we work, and what do you think is going to persist in a post-vaccine world? And maybe a bit more specifically of just sort of where you each come down on kind of this debate over working remotely for those that can versus our desire and some of the benefits of being back together in a physical location. Where do you see that going within your own organization and industries once we get to a world where there's a vaccine that's widely available?
Yeah, I'm happy to take a first stab. So I mean, the short answer is I think it'll go back to a hybrid. I don't think that we're going to be remote forever. If anything, being forced to be remote 100% of the time, you know, has made a lot of us crave our office, right? Like crave that human connection. So my guess is we will have a lot more opportunities to work remotely. I think a lot of people have realized that a large chunk of their jobs are very doable from, you know, a different state or from not the inner city, which I know I'm talking to the DSA, which makes it a little sad. But I also think that like maybe once a week, at least for my organization, I see a hybrid model where once or twice a week we come together and get together in person. You know, there are some really great benefits that we've discovered about working remotely and working from home, right? It is for those of us that have jobs where you have to meet a lot of different people who don't all work in the same building as you, right? Like if you're fundraising or if you're, you know, whatever it is, it's a lot more efficient. There's no commute, right? Like I can pack a lot more meetings in one day with people all around the country. I don't have to travel at all. I have done, you know, I've been with my kids every single night for 6 months, right? That's a pretty rare thing for the CEO of a national organization. So those are all really great things. On the flip side, I am one of those people who now, I don't work from home, I live at work. And I think that is net not a good thing for myself, and it is not a good thing for my team. So I do see a world where we go back to having some in-person space. It's probably something flexible, and it's probably something that you go to once, twice a week, a couple of times a week to get together in person.
Tanya, Maria, how about each of you? Tanya, I know
I'm happy to talk about. I'm happy to talk about hiring as an industry in general. Oh, sorry. That's always the snafu of the online stuff. But I will say higher ed as an industry has really pivoted towards online, maybe not because they wanted to, but because they had to in this pandemic. You know, we've been doing online for 20 plus years, but online is different for different learners and different industries. And so, you know, once was thought as sort of an alternative to traditional higher education is now becoming this new norm. And as an industry, I think we were pretty late to embrace technology for higher education in general. And now that pivot quickly towards it, I think we won't go back as an industry. I think we'll only get better. Not to say that we won't have the in-person, because I think in-person is really important for different types of learners. And what we're learning is that we do need to be flexible in options for individuals. Adult learners learn and work differently than maybe students who are coming right out of high school. I do fear a little bit that maybe some of the K-12 learners may have been traumatized a little bit by online learning and may not want to embrace that, but just knowing that there are different levels of success and how industry does it. But I am certain that higher education will continue to move forward in a very different and dramatic way, and I think that's a good thing for us. I think we've been late to embrace some of the advantages that technology provides for learners. And so that's sort of my take on where we're headed.
And you think that's true for universities and colleges that had no online presence before? You think this sort of being forced to do it will lead them to continue at some level?
You know, most of the major universities were already starting to pivot towards online and having some success or doing some hybrid. I think it will increase their success rates in those areas. And I think we'll continue to see growth in that area, but that's not to say that individuals don't crave that social interaction. We're already seeing it amongst universities across the nation, just that pure need to connect with other human beings and to, you know, to be social. I think, you know, we will always embrace that. We're humans and we crave that. And so I think that will always be a part, but that's not necessarily what individuals, adult learners need. They already have their social networks. They've already established who they are as individuals and their social spheres. And so I think embracing different types of learning for different types of learners will become important.
Yeah, and I will just jump in here from my own organization. I think that certainly the need for connection is and I suspect we see that at the PSBJ and the DSA. That need for social connection is certainly there. It's certainly there at Schwabe, but I also think it affects things like innovation and collaboration. We innovate and collaborate better when we are in person together, and we can exchange those ideas and create those ideas. Because I'm a member of the sort of the tech community, at least back in the day, I can tell you that those discussions and those discoveries around the water cooler are really, really important. And I look forward to the time where Schwabe can do that again, you know, can strategize about a case, can talk about certain case law and how it impacts different facts scenarios. So I echo what you guys are saying, although I see it from a slightly different lens. I think it's necessary for us to continue to be a strong organization, to have that in-person, not just connection, but collaboration and innovation.
Maria, any specific thoughts from you, given that you're sort of operating in this hybrid mode currently of frontline essential workers and some staff that are working remotely?
I would just echo what everybody has said. I think there's going to be a hybrid. I think that quite frankly, it's going to take people some time to trust that it's okay to go back to work. And I'm just thinking of my workforce, okay? Because my workforce is more of a direct service, people-oriented workforce. Not that the rest of you aren't, but we just have kind of operate with some different kind of DNA here. And so I have a lot of employees right now that have a lot of fear. And I know that your question, John, was post-vaccine, but yeah, I've also, you know, I don't know how much trusting there's going to be about the vaccine and the fear that people are going to have that is this really working and is this really going to work? So I think it's going to be a hybrid. I am not going to force anybody to come back. That is number one priority. If people want, and I don't want there to be a false or a negative implication that if you don't come back, that you know, you're not meeting expectations. I think it's going to be a hybrid, but the bottom line for me is people need to feel comfortable coming back to work. I know some executives, not here, but in other parts of the country, who are actually demanding their staff to come back to work. I just don't think that's a great leadership model at all. So I think it's going to be a hybrid. I am probably at the office more than I should be, quite frankly, because I am high risk, but I feel it's my responsibility to be there. I'm John downtown, just so that you know, in my office about 3 days a week. But I have a different job, right? I have a different responsibility. It's not a job for me. It's what I do. It's what I live. I feel responsible to be there. So I think it's going to be a hybrid. But the bottom line for me is, if you're afraid to go to a meeting, you're afraid to come into work, don't. Vaccine or no vaccine.
That's really interesting, Maria, that advice, because I definitely I've heard the same thing, that some people are requiring employees to come back to the office in some form. So thanks for sharing that. We have an interesting question from the audience, which is when the vaccine and pandemic are no longer a danger, what things do you think we will never go back to or never do again? I think that's an interesting flip on the question that John just asked. So I wanted to throw that out there to you. Does anybody have any thoughts on what's not going to come back?
In-person meetings. Or at least,
You think
I
that's
think
not
that's wishful.
yeah, I think that all, that in-person meetings that happened all the time, I think we're going to be, a minority of meetings are going to be, it's going to be the exception, not the rule.
Is that on the client side, Graciela, or internal? Do you think Schwabi clients will prefer to continue to meet virtually with their lawyers, or are you speaking more to internal?
It depends on the specific situation, but I do think that even our clients are preferring virtual meetings because you don't have to travel, right? It's just more effective in many ways, except for the collaboration innovation that I pointed out before, and sort of the case strategy and building that case strategy and those kinds of things I think are better in person. But I do think it's going to be flipped. It's going to become the exception rather than the rule, and we're going to be much more intentional about those in-person meetings, not just because of contagion, which is very much at the forefront of how we think right now, but rather in the presence of vaccine that's widely available and widely distributed. I think it's going to be about effectiveness and efficiency, not having to travel, being able to just click on, as you sit at home, because I do believe we're going to be going into the office much less frequently than we are prior to the pandemic.
I have a sad answer for me. I think hugs will never come back, or at least not for the foreseeable future. Hugging your loved ones, of course, but I think that some of that, like, kind of professional networking, people that you kind of just, I would have like hugged hello or done like a casual hug. Like, I think that we're going to be distancing ourselves a lot more. It's possible that handshakes are completely out. Blowing birthday candles, I think, is never coming back. But I actually don't think that any of these things are never coming back. I think that this is not the new normal. I think that it's going to take years to get over what we have been through this year. But during those years, I think that a lot of those personal sort of communication norms are going to change a lot.
I think those of us that are huggers are going to need like a symbol on our
It's
lapels
so
that say
sad.
it's okay to hug me, so we can
That's like the
do that
first
again.
thing I tweeted when this whole thing started was, man, I like hugs.
I'll wear my
You know,
symbol.
I was thinking about this yesterday, and I'm really getting to the point of delivering teddy bears to all my staff because I want one. I want a big old teddy bear that I can hug, in addition to my husband, and delivering just cute little teddy bears. There you go, to my staff, and saying, you know what,
Out here.
I want you to, if you need something to hold on to and something to hug this little teddy bear. Just make, now of course we have to make sure it's or whatever. Yes. But for my staff, no puppies in their workplace, but making sure that it's all sanitized and clean or whatever. But I just think we're going to have to find other ways to have that connection. And I was so craving my old teddy bear last night, Leslie. I may have to go to FAO Schwartz, and if they're still in business, and see if I can order one.
I can lend you a
sure
toddler.
hope hugs. I will say, I'm not sure I can point to a specific thing that I think won't go away, but I know emotionally I was having conversations with my family, and I think one of the things that will be lasting for generations is the fear of disease or contracting something. I suspect this isn't going to be our one and only virus that we're dealing with on a global pandemic. And I hope it won't be as significant as this pandemic has been. But I think the fear factor that we as humans across the entire world have been brought to a slow halt, impacting our economy, our families, like emotional, physical, everything that you can think of as far as enduring. I think that fear factor will be long lasting.
I think that's a great point, Tanya, and all of you. So we only have a few minutes left here, and I know Graciela has some kind of takeaways for us. So I want to make sure that we have time for that. This has been a really fascinating discussion, and I just want to thank all of you for your insights and for sharing your time with us today. We really appreciate it. I also want to thank Urban Renaissance Group for their support and WGU Washington for your support of today's program. We couldn't do this without you, so thank you so much for that. And thank you to John and Graciela for being my co-MCs today. John?
Yeah, thanks, Emily. And I'll add my thanks to the team at the PSBJ, DSA, and Schwabe Williamson Wyatt for all of their work on this series over the last several months to support the production of it and bringing it to all of you. And you've got a lot to digest in your close out here, Graciela, which you've done a great job at the end of each of these events in bringing to us of your sort of key takeaways. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, John, and thank you, ladies, for your insights. Here are my takeaways. Consider a 3-month planning cycle instead of an annual planning cycle. We can't rely solely on historical benchmarks right now, and we got to really shorten the planning and budgeting cycle to address the uncertainty in the system. Secondly, it's important to set intentional pacing. Boy, I'm really going to take that away after this meeting and really think about what that means in terms of my organization and myself. Be mindful that at any given time, your support system might crumble, and build systems where people can be whole humans. Let's see. Rotate with the executive team being seen, being positive, and being supportive. That's a great reminder, Maria. Thank you for that. Rethinking workspaces to include children and to allow for emotional connection and even meditation, maybe. The emerging hybrid working from home model gives reason for optimism. Innovation, collaboration, and strategy will bring people together again. There's nothing like 2020 to teach you what really matters. We have become unbelievably focused on our priorities, and we need to continue to do that as we fly out of the economy or out of the pandemic. And lastly, we all want a crystal ball. I certainly would wish I had one. And while I don't, there's one thing I know for sure. Seattle is a brilliant and innovative community, if not by example here today with these wonderful panelists. We're even though we're apart, we can always find ways to work together. I know that we will continue to persevere through this pandemic and emerge on the other side stronger than we have ever before. As one of our panelists said, let's all be bold and give the unique solutions to the issues presented to the pandemic. Thank you, ladies, again, and thank you, John and Emily. I just want to remind you, I want to remind everyone that this event has been recorded and that you will receive a follow-up email with a link to the recording in case you missed anything. Thank you all again for coming. Thanks again to our panelists and their insights, and please have a safe and wonderful day.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Stay safe.